Fourth graders, does anyone know if one of our 50 states has parts or all of the 4 deserts that can be found in North America? Any guesses? Any idea? I'll tell you, there is one state that has parts of all 4. And if you guessed Arizona, then you are correct. Arizona contains part or all of 4 North American deserts, and those are the Sonoran, the Mojave, the Chihuahuan, and the Great Basin. And in a little bit, we're going to talk about those great big tall cactus that you may have seen pictures of, or maybe you've visited there before. So that was my little introduction into our 4th grade geography unit that we're going to be doing. We are looking at this specifically to look at a kind of grouping, a strategy for grouping that was developed in the 1990s. And it was something that I actually used quite a bit in multiple content areas. It's great if you've got a nice number like 24 or 25 to work with. That doesn't always happen, but it's called STAD grouping. And that stands for Student Teams Achievement Divisions. It seems like it stood for something different back in the day, but I don't remember. So that's what we're going to go with. So why are we looking at 4th grade? Well, because I have some good resources from a chapter book that I'm going to share with you. And those go along with Standard 4.2, which has to do with physical geography and environment of the U.S. And so within this standard, we would be looking at using maps and other geographic representations. We would be looking at major physical features and how physical processes shape place. Think back to that geography activity that you did with the 5 themes of geography. And then 4.2.3, how people create regions using common geographic characteristics, which is also going to be a part of our unit. And then how physical processes of the Earth's surface impact humans and our environment. And then, of course, already on the way to learning all the 50 states and being able to locate the states and the capital of the U.S. and hopefully even the capitals of many of those states. So what a STAD group is a very intentional kind of grouping. What I would do when I did this was, and we're going to pretend that we have a very nice number of 25 students because I have 5 chapters or lessons that we're going to do, and that's going to be important. In our class of 25 students, what I would do, unbeknownst to the students, they were not aware of this, is that I would take 5 of my highest academic performing students, but not necessarily the highest, because some of those who are very high performing don't really like working in groups. They don't like helping others. They prefer to do their own thing, which is fine, but sometimes we need them to work in groups. So I would identify 5 people whom I knew could work well with others and be leaders within their groups. Then I would go toward the other end of the academic performances and find some of those students who struggle the most and who will be glad to work with other students and will allow other students to help them. So I would then start with my 5 here and then my 5 here. And then among the rest of the group, I would sort of rank them in different ways. I would keep a lot of things in mind, and that included certainly diversity, but not only diversity. It also had to do with which students got along well, which students didn't, who was likely to just sit and talk and chatter and not get anything done. So there were many, many traits that I would keep in mind as I did this. So obviously this is not a group that you're going to be able to do the first week or 2 of school. You need to know your students pretty well before you're able to accomplish this. I would get my students then in their 5 groups of 5. And then within those, I would have them number or, letter A, B, C, D, E, 1 through 5, whatever. And then I would do my introduction to the unit. And so it might be something catchy about the desert question, or I might ask them if they know of a plant that could provide a home for literally thousands of animals. One plant, and that would be the saguaro cactus. So we would talk about the pronunciation of the word saguaro, and I would show some pictures of saguaro, including what they look like when they die and they fall over, and the long wooden strips that support them. And then I would read to them from our textbook this short story, 4 pages, called Cactus Hotel. And this story is available online too. I've used it before for a few different purposes. It's just a nice short story with a lot of very important and interesting information. Now I skipped that. What I would do first is just a simple pre-assessment, something like a fist to 5, something very easy, to see what some misconceptions might be. So for example, we might talk, I might ask them about deserts, about what is a desert, because kids generally think that a desert has to be hot and dry. They don't always understand that it doesn't have to be hot to be a desert. It just has to be very dry. So I would ask them 5 or 6 questions just to see where they were, see if they had some misconceptions in there. And then I would read this story by Brenda Z. Guberson. And as I'm reading the story, I would have some ways of demonstrating the very, very slow growth of the cactus. So after 10 years, and at this point, we're going to have some students who aren't even 10 years old. So compare that to that cactus being only 4 inches tall, only this high, 4 inches tall after 10 years. And then we continue reading about the other animals that make their homes in there. And then we see that after 25 years, it's only 2 feet tall. So maybe we're using the tile on the floor to kind of measure that, or the big bricks on the wall, depending on what your classroom is made of. And then after 50 years, it's only 10 feet tall. Well, we're looking about, about the height of a ceiling, maybe. After 50 years, and these things get so tall. So we would be looking at all that and trying to keep the kids, really excited to learn more about a desert region and what happens in a desert region. After the reading of this short story, Cactus Hotel, I would first ask them, so in what ways is it like a hotel? And of course, they'd have a lot of those, but then I would say, in what ways is it not like a hotel? And the biggest point there being that it's a permanent home to many of the animals. Many of the animals live in that same saguaro their whole lives. Their whole families live within that same saguaro. And then if I wanted to tie in an art activity, I might use some pipe cleaners and glue stick, or like the tongue depressor kind of sticks, those colored sticks and things, and little pieces of construction paper, cardstock, googly eyes, stuff like that. And let the students create some of the animals that can be found living in the saguaros. We might also do a movement activity in which the students move like the different animals, and then maybe we have to guess what they're doing. Lots of different ways we could do that. And now we're ready to begin our unit on the Southwest. So each group is going to have a lesson or a section from the unit, and I'll give you some examples of what those look like from this textbook. So for example, group 1 has the first lesson, and over here we have their vocabulary. We have the what we want to know. Most of these have one person in particular that they highlight who's from the area, and then places. And this could also kind of go along with some of the vocabulary because some of these are difficult to pronounce. The lessons aren't very long. They've got nice pictures in them and lots of good bolded words, just kind of your typical textbook. So then we get down to the natural resources, and then we have the review here. So students would spend some time just going through these individually and together in their groups, in their homogeneous groups, because all the groups are kind of the same. You know, they have the higher and the lower and lots of diversity in among there. So another lesson over early history, Southwest, and then from this part is Texas and Oklahoma. And I would, in addition, I would provide some other resources, and those resources might include some children's books. So here I pulled up some books that are set in Arizona, a couple of them that I'm familiar with. A couple of these that I think would be really, really good would be the picture book of Cesar Chavez and the Cactus Cafe. That's a very, very similar story to what we would have just read about the Cactus Hotel. This one also similar to that, but Coyote, a Trickster Tale from the American Southwest. That might be a fun one to use too, because it has the Southwest animals in there. Another one is this book that I have called The Train to Perry. A professor in southeastern Oklahoma wrote this book. It has to do with a family during the land run, one of the land runs, and I'm going to tell you a little more about it in another video that I'm going to make about land runs. So this is a book that I might then provide with the group that has the Oklahoma, Texas part to go along with it. Now, how are we going to have the students actually engage in the text? Because if we just tell them, okay, everybody read your chapter, there you go, everybody read your chapter, shh, be quiet. Yeah, that's not going to work very well for the most part. Some classes can do it, but most aren't going to do that unless they have something very specific that they know they're supposed to be doing. For example, even though they're all reading something different, we want to make sure that they have the same or very similar directions. So some of the groups might have 5 vocabularies, other words, others might have 11 or 12 vocabulary words. So we might tell them all to focus on 5 vocabulary terms just to keep it consistent all the way across the groups. We're also going to look at how to engage with the text. And to do this, you're so lucky to have these social studies frameworks for ideas. And this one, yeah, in the frameworks, one that I thought would be familiar to many of you and that you might like. Let's see, where'd it go? I'm almost there. Oh, here it is, 5 themes GeoMat. So they could work then within the group and look at these 5 themes of geography and provide small sketches and notes, whether just words or short phrases or sentences. That could be up to the individual groups, but you might use this kind of a paper and put it out on the bigger like chalk paper, something bigger than just your traditional piece of 8.5 by 11 paper. Let them do one as a group and then write their own down from that one. For example, that's just an idea of a way to engage the students then with the content that they're reading. And then what might they create from their learning? Maybe you're going to have them write a poem with so many lines. Maybe you're going to have them create a commercial video. And in their video, they might highlight something that would make it great for visiting, something that would make it a great place to live, and something that would be a drawback to living there, for example. So you might have some very specific requirements that you would have them do in a way that they're engaging with their learning. And then the kind of evidence that they're going to have, and this can become the formative assessment tool. So if they're doing that big piece of butcher paper and they have their their 5 themes of geography on there, well, that can be the formative assessment. Then you're going to want them to apply their vocabulary to what they are doing. So think of ways to make vocabulary fun and meaningful. I used to love doing vocabulary with middle and upper elementary students because there are so many ways to make it fun and funny, of course, depending on the words, but we would use it sometimes to make short stories. We would do silly things and look at ways to mispronounce the words. For example, the word butte is one of the words in one of those lessons. So I'm sure you know what they're going to immediately want to call that if they don't know that it's called a butte. But anyway, have fun, mispronouncing them, and then focus on the actual pronunciation, and maybe look at how many of them come from Mexican vocabulary terms, and some come from indigenous groups. But here are some examples of ways that you can drill down to the vocabulary and make it fun. And let's see, I wanted to look at, that's for when we come back together. So once they're feeling pretty confident, all of the groups have engaged in this for however long a time that you're spending on it, whether it's a couple days or a couple weeks on this longer unit, then each group member is going to become the expert. And then they're going to go out to the other groups and they're going to teach what they know, and they're going to have their organizer or their 5 themes paper, their geo map, and use that to teach it to another group. So remember earlier when all the students numbered off 1 through 5. So all the 2s are going to get together here. All the 5s are going to get together over here, and they're each going to be teaching something different to the group. They're each going to become experts, and they're going to use that evidence that they developed and their vocabulary as well. So then once they've all 5 taught their lessons and they've talked it through, then you're going to do summative assessments. And one example for that is that students are going to remain in their mixed groups, their heterogeneous groups, and they're going to each take notes over the broader unit with the all 5 represented there. And one activity they might do with that is the magnet word summaries. I really like this, but with a little modification. Instead of only having 4 stemming out from that, I would have more than 4. We could also do vocabulary mapping, word mapping, things like that. But this is a nice, simple format to use, particularly in a small group of 5. And then those terms that they use on that document will then become the terms that they use in their writing or whatever project it is that you are going to have them do to be assessed. Are you going to have them comparing something or creating something, analyzing something, or just doing a simple kind of writing? Whatever kind of summative assessment you would be doing, then each student would have the documentation from their group discussions, from both group discussions, actually. And so they should all be pretty well prepared to take on whatever it is you have for them. That's just a strategy, another strategy that I have done many times. I enjoy doing. I used to do this in social studies class to a limited extent when we met in person, but kind of harder to do that now since we don't meet in person, at least for the time being. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you found that to be of value.